At my worst, I wagered over $16 million dollars in about 8 months. 16 million. And the crazy part is, I didn't even think I had a problem at that point, but I was down over 7 figures already. And it wasn't just my money. That was loan money, that was money from family, that was money I borrowed, that was payday loans, regular loans, friends' money. And again, I didn't think I had a problem. My name's Joe, and my last bet was April 16th, 2024. And this is my story about how gambling really ruined my life. Like most people, especially if you started betting 5 or 10 years ago, you started with a bookie, and it usually started small and it felt controlled, like weekly payouts. Everything felt casual. But I definitely noticed signs early on. Like if I was up going into the weekend, I would press my bets and try and turn it into way more. Or if I was down, I would chase. My thinking was simple. Yeah, I've overextended myself a couple of times, but it's no different than going to a bar and waking up the next morning and saying, wow, I just spent way too much money. But I wasn't in financial trouble. One of the early signs that I knew something might be wrong had to do with bookie payouts. So, again, with bookies, you usually get paid Monday or Tuesday, and you don't get paid until the end of the day after they collect from all the other people who lost. So, if I was up, I knew I'd get paid later that night. But I also knew something else. That meant I had extra money to gamble with. So I always wanted to start the week ahead, and I'd end up taking some long odds bets like minus 800 and risk way too much on a heavy favorite. Because as a gambler, in my mind, heavy favorites never lose, especially not on the money line. But of course they did, and they do all the time. And the crazy part was, instead of waiting another 6 hours to get paid, I'd actually end up owing the bookie that day because I had to re up my credit line. And with bookies, you don't have to put the money up front usually. So I did the next logical thing, right? Which was taking out loans. The plan was simple: take out a loan, win the money back, pay the loans off, get back to even, and then stop gambling. Or at least start fresh. But these weren't good loans. These were those janky companies charging 35% interest, and they still ran credit checks. So I could do it at first because my credit was still intact, but that honestly didn't last very long. Eventually, I had to start taking out payday loans at like 800 or 1,000% interest. And every single time I took one out, I told myself the same thing. This is the last time. I just need to win a few bets, pay the loans back, get out of debt, and then I'll stop. That's the cruelty of gambling. You don't chase the math, you chase the feeling, and you just want action. And honestly, by the end of it, I didn't even really care if I was winning or losing. I just knew I needed action to get through the day. Another big sign for me was what happened with bookies. I would lose with one bookie, come up with some excuse or a payment plan, but instead of paying them back and stopping, I'd find another bookie to take my action. So I could win with him and pay the first guy. I was basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. And honestly, at one point, I owed 5 different bookies at the same time. I did a lot of stupid things coming up with excuses like fake phone numbers. I'd tell a bookie I was referring a friend, but it was actually me with a different number. So now I owed the same guy on 2 different accounts. I even told one guy I couldn't pay him because I was at the World Cup and I needed to make sure I had cash to get back into the country in case something happened. And looking back, I mean, I know that guy knew I was completely full of it. At home, I was lying too. I worked a 100% commission job, so sometimes my checks were $10,000, sometimes they were nothing, sometimes I didn't get paid for a whole month, so money was moving quickly. And I always refused to combine finances with anybody. The reason I always gave was that it's easier to track expenses if everything is separate. But the real reason, I was hiding my gambling. And the crazy part is, I actually believed my own lie. I convinced myself separate accounts were helping me track money. And looking back, I wish I had just combined everything because the problem would have been exposed way sooner and I probably would have stopped years earlier. And then gambling became legal in Illinois. And I thought the apps would fix everything. Now I can cash out anytime I want. I won't be forced to chase through the weekend anymore, but nothing changed. If I won, I would press my bets because I knew I was down overall. And if I lost, I chased. I'd go up a little, cash some money out, lose a few bets, and deposit it right back in. Eventually, I reached the highest VIP tier with one sportsbook. So I had my own hosts, and they were offering me tickets, bonus bets, rewards. And we're not talking casino grandma rewards like a free frying pan. We're talking Breitling watches, custom golf clubs. At one point, they even offered me a trip to Italy for truffle hunting, which is like insane. And I never took any of those because I always wanted the bonus bets instead. And honestly, I didn't want people asking questions like, how did you get those tickets? How did you afford this? So really, I was just protecting the lie, but those rewards fed the fantasy. In my mind, if they were offering me those experiences, I must actually be successful. Gamblers Anonymous calls it the dream world of gambling, and I thought I was living it, even though I was completely broke, living paycheck to paycheck while making six figures. Eventually, my whole day was structured around action. The first thing in the morning, I checked any overnight bets. On the drive to work, I started betting Chinese basketball, and those games would run until like 8:30 in the morning. And then the first wave of European soccer games started, which I knew nothing about. And I told myself I'd become a soccer fan, but the truth was I just had bets on the games. And then around 11 a.m., there'd be a little gap, so I'd start betting on tennis, which I barely knew the rules. By the end of it, I could name random ATP Tour players. And then I found European basketball. And I'm not talking the big leagues either. Turkish women's basketball, Finnish basketball, Icelandic basketball. It was absolutely insane. And then, of course, the afternoon soccer games would start, and then you'd have your night games like NBA, NFL, college football, the usual US sports. I even remember watching a Weber State versus Utah State basketball game. Again, nobody watches that game unless you went to those two schools, and people would always ask why I care so much about sports. I'd just say, well, I'm a huge fan. I just love sports. I like seeing the best people in the world do their jobs. But really, I just had action on it. At one point, I'd actually turned a $3,000 or $6,000 deposit into over a $500,000 in about 2 weeks. And it wasn't from crazy parlays, it was literally just straight bets. So my thought was I'd withdraw the 300,000, leave another 200 or so in the account and told myself I'm done. This is the run of a lifetime. I'll never need to deposit again. This money's going to last forever. And then I said, all right, as you probably know the story, just one more big bet. And that lost. So then it became another bet and then another. And that $500,000 was gone in 3 days. That's the trap. Winning doesn't stop the compulsion, it just fuels it, especially if you're a problem gambler. The crazy part is, I never actually decided to quit myself. My family found out about everything, and that's when I went into treatment. And that's also when I was diagnosed with depression, something I had no idea I was dealing with. I wasn't eating. I lost like 25 pounds in 6 months. I was barely sleeping. If I got 2 hours of sleep or 10 hours of sleep, it didn't matter. I was still exhausted. And I even was dealing with suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation. So things like, I hope someone runs a red light and T-bones me. And honestly, I didn't know much about depression. I thought it was just stress. I didn't even know that had a name. I thought depression meant you were bedridden all day. But I was getting up, going to work, and even though I was really just gambling, what I eventually learned is I was self-medicating. Gambling was the drug, and I didn't even know I had a wound. In other words, I was putting Band-Aid on a cut I didn't know existed. Eventually, I went to inpatient treatment, then PHP, then IOP, about 4 months of intensive therapy. I took a leave of absence from work, and then another year of weekly therapy, Gamblers Anonymous multiple times a week. And don't get me wrong, that first GA meeting is terrifying. You're sitting in a room full of strangers saying, "Hi, I'm Joe, I have a gambling problem." But the more times I said it, the easier it got. And the truth started dismantling the secrecy. My last bet was April 16th, 2024, and quitting gambling didn't magically fix everything. I'm still picking up the pieces financially, emotionally, relationships wise, rebuilding trust. I mean, those debts don't disappear overnight and relationships take time. But every day I get to make one decision: not to gamble today. And progress isn't linear. It's a cliche, but it's true. If I gamble again, it won't fix what I broke, it'll only make it worse. Putting my story online has actually been the best accountability tool I've ever found. Even when the trolls comment things like, "You're just one bet away," or "You're a quitter," I actually enjoy responding, at least most of the time, because those comments don't trigger me, they just make them look stupid. And I'm not saying everyone needs to post their story online, but you do need to be honest with someone, because the biggest thing I hear is my spouse doesn't know, my family doesn't know, my friends don't know. That secrecy is fueled by shame. But the truth is, most people won't judge you. They'll probably just love you a little harder. If anything in this story sounds familiar, whether it's the lies, the VIP status, the chasing losses, just know you're not alone. One thing I recommend to every gambler: pull your win-loss statement. Actually look at it. Because if I had done that 3 years earlier and saw that I had wagered $16 million, I would have been shocked. Because math is math. If you bet $100 a day, that's $36,000 a year. That's a huge percentage of most people's income. And yes, I understand you're going to win some bets and lose some bets, but wagering $36,000 a year is huge. So the real question is, how much are you down net? Because deposits and withdrawals all blur together. See the truth and don't wait until it's too late. If this story connected with you, make sure to like and subscribe. Every week, I'm sharing content about the psychology of gambling, how the industry hooks people, and how to fight back. Appreciate you listening.